Poke the Bear is brought to you by Prize Picks.
And welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 336, part of the CLNS Media Network. If you have time, please subscribe to our Bruins Rinkside YouTube channel. We have pretty much daily content between Poke the Bear, Bruins Beat with Evan Marinofsky, Pucks with Hags, Deal with me, Joey Capone. We have you covered every step of the way, so please follow along with us over at YouTube. And if you don't like YouTube, you don't want to see my face, I get it. Please subscribe and follow along over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts. This show is also brought to you by Prize Picks, North America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Download today and use code CLNS to get $50 when you play, just $5. Prize Picks, run your game. My name is Conor Ryan, and I am joined by myself. It's a solo podcast because a couple different factors are going to play here. One, I am on the West Coast still. And two, I feel like I'd be remiss not to add into the great stuff that Evan and Joey kind of talked about on Wednesday, rather, about looking at or Thursday. All these days are now blending in now. I can't even tell what day is which. I feel like the Bruins head coaching search has broken my brain as to what is going on. But the Bruins finally have a head coach, and I wanted to add my commentary to what Evan and Joey discussed with the Bruins hiring Marco Sturm. So just going to do a little maybe rant, go through a few things of what the Bruins are getting in a new head coach in Marco Sturm and what Bruins fans can expect from him going forward. It's going to take a while for us to actually hear from Marco Sturm. He's going to be speaking with the media next Tuesday over by TD Garden. So there is kind of this lull right now where you're still kind of to look at what Marco Sturm did with the LA Kings, with the Ontario Reign, the Kings AHL affiliate, to try to kind of parse together what type of team he's trying to build here in Boston and what his identity, what his principles are. And it's easy when it's a coach jumping into a situation like, let's say, Bruce Cassidy, where he takes over in the middle of the year. And from the first practice that he took over, you could see he was trying to really run things really differently. It was a lot more active, changed the Bruins' approach offensively, was a lot more innovative with the power play. So those are all things that do play into this, where you're trying to figure out what kind of imprint Marco Sturm is trying to build here. You got this kind of waiting period, right, where he's not speaking to the media yet. He's not discussing where exactly he's trying to tinker with the power play or how he's maybe changing things defensively, anything like that. So for now, all we can really do is look at his past record with the LA Kings system. I don't know if we're going to go all the way back to the German national team in the Olympics or anything like that. But those are all things that for right now, we're trying to see what type of coach the Bruins have in Marco Sturm. And I think it's something that Evan really hit the nail on the head with looking back from yesterday's episode, where he's going to be a defensive-minded coach. This is a guy that you look at who the other reported finalists were for the Bruins, right? Whether it's Mitch Love, whether it's Jay Leach, guy who's within their system. I think the Bruins, listen, they've got a whole lot of stuff they have to work on, right? Whether it's adding more scoring depth, adding just skill to their lineup, adding speed to the lineup. It's not all going to be done in one offseason, but I think for the Bruins and from Don Sweeney's perspective, if you got all these different fires to put out, I think the first one you have to focus on is just getting back to your identity, right? Because listen, the Bruins could use a Mitch Marner and a Brock Besser and a Nikolai Ehlers and a Will Cooley. We can go down the list. Martin Necas, all these guys. And believe me, it's going to be a long offseason. We're going to talk a lot about these different players the Bruins could target in free agency, trade, even we'll look at the draft. This team is just so barren in terms of difference makers up front. But I do think you look at the Bruins, the first step has to be getting back to their strengths, and it lies in their defense and goaltending. And I do think you look at all that went wrong this past year. If the Bruins can get Jeremy Swayman playing at a high level again, and the defense in front of him especially, to really tighten up and going back to the same kind of system that that foundational strength that has carried them for years, right? I think that is going to be the biggest determinant, is just whether or not that's not going to, I think, maybe elevate or raise the Bruins ceiling, but it gets them back into being a competent team that can play meaningful games in March and April. I think that is the first step, is getting Swayman and the defense back in order. And I do think Marco Sturm's the guy that you look at what he's done with the Kings organization, kind of fits that same model, right? It's clear when you listen to Don Sweeney before this offseason began, he did mention the LA Kings as a team that, listen, sometimes they're not exactly the most riveting product on the ice, especially I don't know if the Bruins are going to do a Todd McClellan 1-3-1 or something like that. Maybe they're going to do the old Guy Boucher neutral zone trap. I really hope not, because my God, it is not all that riveting to watch night in and night out. But I do think you look at especially how the Kings have kind of evolved, how Marco Sturm, where he's been running the Ontario Reign down in the AHL, what they focus on and prioritize is that really stingy defensive style. Really not giving a whole lot up in the neutral zone, protecting leads, holding on, winning games 3-1, 2-1. And that's kind of what the Bruins were, I think, trying to do this past year. But the way the roster was built and the way just the defense plus injuries kind of disintegrated, it made it not a very viable option. And I don't think that the Bruins have to just rest on the fact they have to win games 2-1. I think you still need to really optimize and change your approach offensively to, just compete with how today's NHL is, right? Where honestly, you look at teams like Florida and even teams like the Oilers, that they're so effective because half the time the puck's in the offensive zone. They're relentless with the puck. They're forechecking. They're causing turnovers, and it's almost like a really good suffocating forecheck is the best defense in today's NHL. So I do think that Sturm is going to preach, that stingy Kings defensive style that I think clearly Don Sweeney thinks is a winning formula. Now, will there be any changes? Is it going to be the 1-3-1? Are they going to do a 1-2-2? That remains to be seen. But I do think that it's clear the main priority for the Bruins here was trying to find a coach that can get the team back to playing towards its strengths. I don't think it's essentially you're blowing up the entire game plan. You're blowing up the schemes that the Bruins have had. Now, again, he can tweak things. Maybe instead of it being zone, maybe they go man-to-man defense or something like that. But I think it's clear from the Bruins is that when you're looking at all they have to do this offseason, it's not all going to be done this summer. It's going to be a multi-year, whatever you want to call it, right? A rebuild, retool. I think their first order of business had to have been looking at just getting the defense operating as expected. Not even saying that all of a sudden, like, Marco Sturm's going to come in, he's going to tweak a few things, and it's going to be a top 5 defense, and Jeremy Swayman's got a 930 save percentage. That would be great, but I don't really see that being the case here. But I do think it's just tightening things up defensively. And I think just by doing that, all of a sudden the team that had the 5th worst record in the NHL is, as I said earlier, playing meaningful hockey in March and April. And then if you hope that some guys step through a breakthrough offensively, whatever Sturm does on the offensive side of the game to get more out of this team, I think that's what you're hoping for. But I do think the biggest question mark is because I think regardless of whoever you hired, right, whether it's Mitch Love, Jay Leach, Sturm, they all were going to have that as, I think, maybe their founding principle, right, was working on their defensive game. But it's what do you do on the offensive side, right? What do you do to get your defenseman more involved offensively? That was the reason why I really liked a guy like Mitch Love, because it felt like that was a guy that really preached that to the Washington Capitals, and you saw how many of their players had career years or really took strides forward, right? With, Martin Fehervary, Jacob Chikrin, who is a depressed asset during his last couple of years up in Ottawa, had an unbelievable year for Washington this past year. Rasmus Sandin. So he's a guy that was a priority for him in Washington, and you're seeing those results out there on the ice. What is Marco Sturm going to do to get the D more involved offensively, to be more assertive with the puck, to have them activate more, to be more shot ready? I think you're seeing one thing, doesn't matter how the rosters are built in the NHL, all these teams that go far in the playoffs, that win a round or two or in the conference finals, a lot of them generate a lot of offense from the blue line with, it's not like these guys are firing pucks from the point, but it's causing tips, rebounds, all those things that when premium ice is at a is so tough to come by in the postseason. I think you need shot-ready defensemen to kind of generate and kind of make something out of nothing. So I think that has to be a priority for Marco Sturm. And then what is his overall approach in terms of quality over quantity with shot attempts? Is it going to be more of a Bruce Cassidy, put everything on net because you're just trying to generate something, even if it's going to lead to some low danger chances and you give up possession? Or is it going to be the Jim Montgomery of holding on to the puck, prioritizing possession, and waiting for the ideal opportunity? I think if you're the Bruins and you have to work right now, at least so hard for your offense, I think you want to be firing all these pucks on net as much as possible and just, I think, juice up your chances to generate something, whether it is ugly goals, greasy goals. I think right now, barring you adding a Marner or Besser or one of these players, you're going to need to make things easy for your team that is deficient on scoring to generate chances and create quality opportunities. So how Sturm, tweaks that offensively is going to be something worth watching. And also, I think just the overall way that Sturm is going to give, I think, these younger players some rope. This is going to be a team that, again, is already one of the youngest teams in the NHL now, which is kind of crazy to look at. But not a whole lot of guys over the age of 30. And there's going to be, I think, a lot of players this year, whether it's, Fraser Minton, Matt Patra, if it's maybe a younger player like Mason Lohrei, who had a down year and is really looking to bounce back, but probably has that pressure on him. I think you're going to need a younger coach to really kind of give them some leeway and give them some patience and give these guys the opportunity to try, fail, but you hope succeed at the NHL level. And so I think one thing that has always been mentioned about Marco Sturm, a guy that has been coaching in the Kings ranks for a long time, is that he's known as a really, really good communicator. Open door policy is what you hear. Really direct to players, but a guy that can relate to them as a former NHL player. I was reading, there's actually a really good piece in The Athletic by Eric Stevens. It was actually about Marco Sturm last year when he was the finalist for the San Jose Sharks job that obviously went to Warsofsky instead. But from Stevens, he's talking to a few different players that have played for Marco Sturm down with Ontario. One of them, Kevin Connaughton, and this is from the story. Kevin Connaughton said his coach, Marco Sturm, has an open door policy, but also knows when players want a level of separation from the bench boss. His interactions with players come when necessary, he said. Rain forward Akil Thomas, who made his NHL debut this past season, said Sturm likes to have periodic check-in meetings with each player individually. Those leave a lasting impression. Quote, I think from these meetings, you kind of realize that he actually really cares about you, Thomas said. Just knowing that, it kind of allows you to really buy into what he's saying because he truly wants the best for you. I think he's gotten that respect from everyone on this team. That's why I think he's had great buy-in from everyone wanting to do whatever they need to do for the best of the team. And so I think when you're this Bruins team that is going to have a lot of younger players come into this system. You're going to have a lot of new faces. Even when you look where this team was 2 years ago from where it is now, it's pretty jarring to see just the amount of overhaul with this roster. I think having a coach that can be personable, can communicate well, and can get especially younger players to buy in. And I think you're going to get that buy-in from the established talent, right? The Pasternaks, the Charlie McAvoy's, the Hampus Lindholms. But I think it's also important to keep what is, you don't really have, as it was in years past, where you'd have like the old guard, right? But then you would have kind of the in between veterans. You always had like the Torrey Krugs to the Charlie Coyles to these late 20s, early 30s players that were that bridge between the new generation and old. Now you don't have anyone from the 2011 team, so that's over and done with. You have these guys like McAvoy and Pasternak, but after that, it's really a whole different group. And I think there are some guys that I think really kind of found their voice and want to be more vocal players moving forward. I look at guys like Nikita Zadorov, Elias Lindholm, even a guy like Morgan Geekie, I think was really good of really stepping up. So you are having, I think, that secondary group of leadership, but it is still guys that have been here for a year or two. And so I do think having a coach like Sturm who can relate to the younger players but can communicate well and get guys to buy in is going to be critical during a season where it's tough to really gauge what the Bruins are going to be, right? You hope they take steps forward. It feels like they can only go up from here. You hope. But I do think it is going to require a lot of buy-in from the players to whatever Sturm is preaching, and I think that is going to be critical for him. So as a whole, I like the Sturm hire. I think we'll talk a little bit more about what other options there are out there, but I do think it's something where I've seen a lot of measured takes, or maybe not measured takes, maybe pretty rational reaction in terms of where you're looking at with uh, some people are disappointed, some people are milk toast over it, or pretty lukewarm as to what exactly he's going to bring. But I think if you're the Bruins and you're trying to change things up, I think bringing in a coach that is a younger guy but has really kind of developed his own path, he's carved his own way. Wasn't like this guy was just chilling in the Bruins system or doing anything like that. He went out overseas. He went over to the Kings system for 7 years and really kind of carved his own path to where it is now. And the track record has been pretty impressive wherever he's kind of been. So I do like the hire. I really want to see what he says next week in terms of how he wants to change things around with this system to get more out of the group that's already here, even if they are going to make some changes this summer, obviously. But I'm very curious to see what he's trying to build with this team, and it's clear the Bruins think that he can be a guy that can lead what is going to be a very different group moving forward. Um, Talk a little bit more about this, but before we do that, let's take a quick break. Hear from our good friends over at Prize Picks. Do you know ball? Do you know ball? There's only one series left in the playoffs, and the championship is officially on the line. That means time is running out for you to put your final takes to the test on Prize Picks, the best place to cash in on all your favorite sports. This year's basketball players are headed towards crowning a first-time champ in more than 50 years. Don't miss your last chance to cash in on history with Prize Picks. Pick more or less on player stats like points, rebounds, assists, and more for your shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play just $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Think Shia will get more than 40 points? How about Tyrese Halliburton for more than 25 points? Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this basketball season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. Prize Picks also has a ton of promos, including Flex Friday. Make sure you opt in and tap the checkbox in your lineup builder to be eligible for the protected play. Choose squares from any game on the board. If your lineup does not win, you get your net losses back in promo funds up to your promo limit as soon as the lineup settles. And it's not just basketball. On Prize Picks, you can mix and match player projections from different sports. Combine your favorite hockey players with players from baseball, basketball, esports, and so much more. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the ice into your Prize Picks lineup. There's really no shortage of ways to participate in Prize Picks. This week, I'm looking at the board, and I'm going to cover all my bases. I've got Tyrese Halliburton for more than 30 points and Brad Marchand for more than 1 goal. It's really that easy. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS on the Prize Picks app to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Shout out once again to our good friends over at Prize Picks. And so, yeah, going off of what you're seeing with Marco Sturm, and I get that some Bruins fans wanted someone else. They wanted Mitch Love, who I get. A lot of them wanted Misha Donskov, which very curious to see how that situation kind of plays out because Dallas obviously fired Pete DeBoer this morning. That was something that Evan and I talked about of are the Bruins waiting for Pete DeBoer to hit the open market? Because he does feel like a guy that now that he is available, feels like a team just going to fire the coach to bring him in. He seems like someone who has a really short shelf life of 3 to 4 years, but he's been to the conference finals 8 out of the last 10 years. He does get results, so I don't think he's going to be a free agent for all that long. But who knows? Maybe it's they bring up Misha Donskov as their new head coach moving forward. But I don't know how much Donskov, who's a really appealing candidate, has a lot of really impressive credentials. How much of that was just driven by what we were thinking were maybe under the radar candidates. Maybe he's someone the Bruins weren't very high on. Maybe he's someone that wanted to stay in Dallas, knowing that maybe that situation was going to change this offseason. But he wasn't really in the running there. You had guys like Jay Woodcroft, who is due for another shot, but I feel like if the Bruins hired him, you'd have the same kind of skepticism or feeling that he's one of those kind of retread coaches. So I do think you look at the Bruins, and I get where a lot of Bruins fans are down, I think, in terms of any move they make this offseason, barring it being, hey, we're going to trade for Jack Eichel and Simon Schmarter and Nikolai. Like, that'd be great, but that's not all going to happen. Or any of these slam dunk kind of moves. I do think a lot of it is rooted in the fact that just there isn't a lot of faith, I would say, in his ownership and front office group right now to make these moves. So I think whoever they were going to hire, whether it was Mitch Love, who if he gets hired, I think a lot of us would be happy on this podcast, but a lot of people on the radio would be like, "Who the hell is Mitch Love?" Which valid. If they hired a retread veteran coach like Peter Laviolette or John Tortorella, it'd be the tired old, going back to the same well of these coaches that have a short shelf life and aren't going to give you all that much. So how does that really fix what the Bruins are doing? You could look at Jay Leach, who the Bruins still really think highly of, and it's curious to see if he kind of stays uh, on Marco Sturm's staff moving forward. That remains to be seen. Obviously, we know Joe Sacco is now going to the Rangers, so best of luck to him. But there seems to be the rest of that coaching staff, barring probably Bob Essenza. There might be some changes there, but we'll see what Marco Sturm ends up doing. But if it was Jay Leach, people would be like, oh, okay, they're doing another in-house promotion. Also, the defense, which is Jay Leach's main focus, was a mess this past year. So I don't know how much that inspires a lot of confidence. So you would have gotten pushback from that. So I don't know what coach would have been hired that you would have that Bruins fans all universally would have been like, oh, that's a great move, right? So unless it's Pete DeBoer or someone like that, maybe they brought Bruce Cassidy back, people would be happy. But I don't think that's also happening anytime soon. So I do think when you look at what Mako Sturm provides, yes, he's a younger coach. He's has the ties to the Bruins, but also I wouldn't view it as part of that same old boys club that I think a lot of people are quick to point at it as a criticism of this hire, right? Like when he was in the final years of his Bruins career, Don Sweeney was like working with player development. He was like what Adam McQuaid is doing now. It wasn't like he was in the front office, running things and looking at building up rosters that way. He was more focused on seeing how Brad Marchand was doing down in Providence at the time. Honestly, that's where those kind of things were. If anything, if Don Sweeney was working on development, he was probably looking more at Brad Marchand being like, hey, we're going to replace Marco Sturm, who has a lot of injuries, with this guy down in Providence who's raising hell down there. So I don't really view it as, Sweeney and Neely necessarily have this buddy system with Marco Sturm where it was a given that, oh, he plays here, we're boys with him, we get some beers in the offseason, we golf. No, I don't really think that's the case. I think the familiarity with the market helped Sturm, but I don't think that was the overriding principle as to why they wanted to bring him aboard. So I'd push back on that theory. So I do think where you're the Bruins and you're trying to go outside of the box and find a younger coach that's going to work with a younger team, I do think Sturm does make a lot of sense in terms of a guy that has some ties, but it wasn't like he was developing here as a coach, right? He went over to Europe, coached Germany to a silver medal in the 2018 Olympics, went over to the Kings system, worked in as an assistant coach up at the NHL level for 4 years, went down to Ontario, was a head coach there. I do think those are all situations where he's a guy that has kind of carved out his own path and is someone that can really continue to kind of flourish and work with what is going to be a younger team, where I think there's pressure on the Bruins to bounce back and be a competitive team this year. But I also don't think it's what we've said earlier. I think if you bring in a younger coach like Sturm, you want the team to show progress. You want the younger players to take steps forward. But if they play good hockey in March and come up just short, they finish with 88 points, 90 points, and it's a competitive year in the Atlantic or something like that. But you feel like the team's on the right track, especially 2026 is going to be a year you're really looking forward to. I think the Bruins would be happy with that and what Sturm has done in terms of rebuilding this team and having them going in the right direction. I think there is going to be more patience for a guy like Sturm and the Bruins moving forward with having a young coach in place like that. So I overall think this is a really good move by the Bruins in terms of bringing in someone that can really grow, especially with a young team. I think if it was, a Peter Laviolette or someone like that, I don't know, a guy like that you bring in to get immediate results. And if you're the Bruins and you're going to have all these younger players and new faces in the system, are you, as a veteran coach, going to have the patience to let, Fraser Minton have a rough game or two, knowing that if you stick with them through the bad times right now, maybe by the end of the year, you can look at him and pencil him in as like, this guy is going to be our third line center for the next 5 years, right? Like I think you're going to have some of those growing pains and patience put in place just to make sure this team is in the right spot moving forward and building especially. And so I think as a whole that this is a guy in Marco Sturm that fits into, I think, what the Bruins are looking to do, which is take the slow and steady approach to retooling this team. I don't think this team is just going to sit back now. And I saw a few people mention that the Bruins are going into the McKenna sweepstakes now just because Sturm's there. I don't see that being the case, right? I do think they are going to try to be competitive. I don't think that they just want to sit back and wait 3-4 years and try to be good when Pasternak is 32, 33. I think they want to contend now, but ideally build in the process with these younger players that are coming through the system as well. So I do think Sturm is a guy that we'll be able to glean a lot more next week once he kind of goes into his overall systems and what he's trying to build here. But he is someone that I think Bruins fans should be excited to see what he can do. I think it's definitely a different look for the Bruins, a change of pace, and someone that should be able to build with this team moving forward. So yeah, this was episode 336 of Poke the Bear. Again, if you guys have time, please subscribe to our Bruins Rinkside YouTube channel. We have daily content between Poke the Bear, Bruins View with Evan Marinofsky, Pucks with Hags, Beer with Me with Joey Capone. We've covered every step of the way this Bruins offseason. The show is, once again, brought to you by Prize Picks, North America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Download today and use code CLNS to get $50 back when you play just $5. Prize Picks, run your game. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, X, whatever it's called these days, you can at Conor Ryan _93. And you can read my stuff over at Boston.com and Boston Globe. Once again, this was episode 336 of Poke the Bear. I'm Conor Ryan. You fans have a great rest of your week.